Your weekly home for sports news, video game reviews, and hot takes with your hosts, Brandon, Zach, and Justin. Enjoy the show.
What is up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the Nest Podcast. This is episode 106. I'm your host, Brandon, and I'm joined tonight by both of my co-hosts, Zach and Justin. What's up, fellas? How you guys doing?
Yo, what's happening?
Yeah, it's been a long time since we've had both of you guys here on a Monday night. You know, Justin and I have been doing our Thursday night show, and Zach and I have been holding down the fort here on Monday nights, but it's good to have the whole gang back here together. And it was necessary this week because we've got to kick the show off with a little bit of breaking news because, ladies and gentlemen, the 2020 SEC schedules are being announced live right now, and we are already starting to see some of that trickle out. Justin, what are you seeing from your end?
Well, we got our first game in there. We're going to open on the road against South Carolina, which normally if we can open up with a somewhat easy game in the SEC, that's going to be one of them. We were talking earlier, and Tennessee got the shaft as far as opponents. We got one of the harder schedule, and the SEC basically babied Alabama, Georgia, those teams that are perennial powerhouses, and gave them the Vandys, Kentuckys, Mizzous of the world. So opening up with South Carolina, it could definitely be a lot worse, and I'm okay with that.
Yeah, to your point, Tennessee picked up Auburn. That's one of the tougher ones that Tennessee picked up, and that's, anytime you have to battle a SEC West contender, it's a tough matchup. But I saw that Alabama, they picked up Kentucky and Mizzou. So those are the two pushover teams almost in the SEC East minus Vandy. We're going to talk about Vandy here in a little bit, but it's going to be because of their baseball prowess. In football, not so much.
No, and not only did we get Auburn, we got Texas A&M too. So,
which is another tough school. I've shout out to my boy Steven that lives out there in Texas. He's got the A&M logo tattooed on his bicep, and shoot, I gave him hell about it when they weren't that good, but when they got better, and we were good buddies whenever Manziel was tearing it up and they beat Bama and all that stuff. That dude never stopped talking about A&M at that point, but.
Was he the dude that drafted Manziel, his number one pick?
Yeah.
Oh man,
wild move in fantasy football, but it is what it is. Do you think they're actually going to get to go through and play this schedule? I mean, 10 games in the SEC. They're still going to be traveling around from all these schools. Kids on campus are going to be doing their thing, whatever it is that they do. And I have a feeling that before the college football season even kicks off, they're going to have to put the brakes on it.
Yeah, I think they'll get at least a game in. They'll test the waters. The SEC is not, and the ACC is not like the Pac-12 or all these other conferences. We're going to test the waters because we need football down here in the South. I mean, that's just all there is to it. But same thing with, high school right now. There ain't no way they're canceling before we play that first game. It might come after the fact, but, they're going to attempt to do it, to at least say they tried and not say they gave up before even, giving it a try there.
Well, yeah. You mentioned ACC. UNC is one of the more popular ACC teams, and I saw today that they've reported 4 clusters of COVID outbreaks on their campus. And I had to look up what a COVID cluster actually means. And it's a pocket of 5 or more students that have tested positive. And there are 4 of those spread out their campus. So those are just kids that have tested positive. We're not talking about people that are just asymptomatic, walking around doing whatever they want to do now and possibly infecting more and more people. And if it happens to get on a football team, then that's curtains for it.
Yeah. I think Justin's right. I think they're gonna try, and they're gonna have to be forced to stop playing. The big thing will be, what is it going to take for it to all shut down? If a lesser known school like say Mizzou or whatever has an outbreak and they can't play, is the rest of the SEC just going to go on kind of like they're doing in baseball?
Yeah, are they going to have to postpone games and try to make them up? You can't play double headers in football, so I don't see how that's going to work. So, to that point, Zach, it's definitely all up in the air. Rich Eisen had the NCAA chief medical officer on his show today, and he said that he doesn't see any way possible for any conference to have a full season this year. And that's the chief medical officer for the NCAA. They've already postponed every other fall sport. Obviously, the only sport the NCAA doesn't have any kind of control over is football because the BCS took that over or whatever. But I don't know. It is what it is.
I think we need to, whenever it does happen, we need to enjoy it and just don't, expect the worst. I mean, but enjoy what we get. You know what I mean? Because we haven't had it football or any sports really in a long time. Baseball's doing their thing, but we're seeing cancellations like crazy through that. The NBA are the only ones being smart about it, and it looks like they're going to finish their season. Well, they're not, things are going to happen, but the bubble is the best idea out of all sports right now.
The NHL also, sir, is doing the right thing. They're also in a bubble to that point. But the NHL, they're already in game 4 of their playoffs. NBA just started today. So
that's I think we should figure we would learn from that, but obviously they don't. So
yeah, I think those leagues are going to have no problems, NHL and NBA. I mean, we've even had people that go outside of the bubble and all that stuff, and nothing has really come of it. So I think they're going to be okay. I think the sports that decide not to play in a bubble are going to be the big questions.
It always is going to come back around to money, and the NFL and MLB owners all wanted at one point to be able to put fans in the seats and collect that ticket revenue and all that stuff. That's what's the ultimate hang up. That's why they want to play in their home ballparks and all that stuff.
Yep.
The Nest podcast is sponsored in part by the Beard Struggle. If you've ever tried to grow your beard, then you know the struggle. We can help you out. Beard Struggle has tapped into centuries of Viking knowledge to inspire beard growth and overall health. Tap into your inner Viking and check out some of the great beard products available at thebeardstruggle.com. The ultimate kit is going to come with everything that you'll need to get your facial hair on point. You're going to get day and night elixir oils, scruff balm, and a beard balm. You're also going to get a bottle of beard wash and conditioner and a savage brush to keep everything looking good. Throw up our promo code NEST20 at checkout and you'll save 20% at thebeardstruggle.com. Guys, I wanted to get that out of the way early because once I start talking about baseball today, there's not going to be any stops because I have a lot to say in regard to that, specifically in regard to one team, the Boston Red Sox, and the things that they need to do to right the wrongs that are going on in that organization right now. But Zach, I want to talk to you a little bit before we jump into that about your team, the St. Louis Cardinals, and how they've actually resumed play.
Yeah, I mean, all in all, didn't look half bad. Won the series against the White Sox, minus that one game. Just beat the Cubs. So not looking terrible. And that was a huge shock for me. I kind of thought everybody would just be super rusty and look kind of slow, but all in all, looks pretty good. The bullpen did great. Yeah, I mean, all is well, especially considering that all those, not all of them, but a lot of key people are on the IL with COVID, Yachty and DeYoung being the two big ones, but seems to be doing okay. It's kind of crazy to think about.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. To come back after a 14, 15 game hiatus and then to win 3 out of 4, that was a pretty impressive feat. The one blemish in there was the Sunday game. And we saw back to back home runs, which is, it's only happened a few times in Major League Baseball history. So that was pretty significant. And I believe you told me that the pitcher on the mound was making his MLB debut. Is that right?
Yep. Yeah. He was called up from the taxi, whatever they call it, taxi team or whatever they're calling that. And yeah, not a good day for the kid. And I think, obviously the blame is on him, but I think the blame is a little bit on Mike Schilt too. If it were me and he let 2 homers go, I would get somebody warm. And if he let a third one go, I'd pull him. Letting the kid give up 4 homers in a row is a bit much.
Well, whenever they're in succession like that, Zach, you don't have enough time for somebody to get warm in the bullpen. So he was just out there. They probably were trying to get somebody ready, but you just didn't have enough time to get them warmed up and get them in the game.
Good point.
So, but I do want to talk about these Boston Red Sox. And Justin, I wanted you on this show specifically so that I could have a non-baseball person's perspective on what's going on. The Boston Red Sox right now are the worst team in the American League. They have the worst record. And this is 2 years removed from them going 108 and 50 something on the season. They had, their all-time best record. And then this season, if it were to play out a full 162 games, they would be on pace to only win 46 of them. So that's pretty terrible. And it's a pretty drastic downfall. Now, we knew going into the season that the Red Sox were going to be without Chris Sale because of his Tommy John surgery. We found out as the summer progressed that they were not going to have Erod on the mound. So the pitching was always going to be suspect. We always knew that there was going to be a bunch of guys rotated in from the minor leagues, and it was going to be rough. But the offense just has not been there. And that's something that everyone kind of expected. Okay, well, we'll score 8-9 runs a game, but we've got to be able to hold other teams below that. And they haven't even been able to do that. So I think it's time to full on embrace the rebuild. And it's time to start thinking about 2021 and beyond. And that being said, I've laid out several little bullet points and steps of what I think the Red Sox should do and what I would do if I was in Chaim Bloom's position. Most notably, the Red Sox have got to retool their farm system. The farm system right now ranks 25th out of the 30 MLB teams, and you can't expect to be able to plug in for any kind of injuries that may happen throughout the season. Look at the Yankees right now. They've got Stanton out, Judge out, Chapman's just now coming back. So they've had big-time players with injuries. DJ LeMahieu's now on the IL. And they've been able to pull from their farm system and plug in there and still be successful. They've beaten the Red Sox 3 nights in a row, and guess what? They're playing again tonight, so they'll probably make it 4. So the key to winning in Major League Baseball is a farm system. Zach, you know as well as I do that these farm systems are crucial. If you have a guy that comes up and gives up 4 jacks in a row, he's going back down to that farm, and you're going to bring somebody else up that could get a shot at it. So I think the first step in retooling the Red Sox has to start at the farm system. And I think that he actually already started back when the Red Sox traded Mookie Betts.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Because in that trade, they were able to get a big league player to replace him on the field, and they got Jeter Downs and Connor Wong, which is a top catching prospect and the future at second base. So that was the beginning of the rebuild, and they just need to go on from there. Now, we talked a little bit about Vandy in our open, about how they're not really known for football, but they are known for pitching or for baseball. They recently, as of, I think, 2019, won the College World Series. Kumar Rocker, star pitcher from that team, became the equivalent of the College World Series MVP. The most outstanding player is what they call it. And he's the general consensus number 1 overall pick. For me, the Red Sox need to embrace the tank for Trevor, tank for Tua mentality and just go ahead and say, Operation Get Rocked for Rocker is a go. That's what they need to have their eyes focused on, is bring in this young stud to be the next big thing to come through Boston. what do you guys think about that? Is it as impactful in baseball to do something like that as it is in football, where you get the immediate returns, especially in a wonky season like this, where, you know, who knows what's going to happen?
Yeah, I'd say if you're going to do that, this is the season to do it, because this is already just such a ridiculous season anyway. If you're losing that terribly this far into it, we don't have much to go for, and you might make middle of the road if you do go on in some crazy winning streak. So this is the season to do something like that. If you want to quote unquote tank for a draft pick, now is the time to do it. It's way better to get that out of the way now than an actual full season.
Right. And, you know, like I said earlier, they were on pace to only win 46 games if this were a 162 game season. So if you do the math, that means they'll probably win less than 20 games in this shortened season. I can't imagine too many other teams are going to be that terrible.
Mm-hmm.
That's what, you know, I know what you're going through. I went from a Falcons team that was 13-3 to a team that went 3-13 the following year. So
Sucks.
it's tough. You know, we're lucky to even have baseball right now. That makes it kind of tough to say to tank, because, you know, if I'm an athlete, I want to give the fans something to be happy about during a tough situation. However, if it comes down to it and it's the last, you know, few weeks of the season and it's close, I mean, that's something that you need to seriously think about or do. As far as the impact, I don't think it impacts a baseball team like an NFL team, just because, you know, there's so many pitchers out there that you haven't heard of yet, whether it be in AAA, single A, double A. There's some yet to come. I mean, but in football, we don't have that minor leagues, so to say. So if you tank for a player, you're expecting them to start the following year.
Sure.
So
And with a baseball player, they're going to have to go through the progressions of those minor leagues. Yeah. But like I said, the number one thing that the Red Sox need to be focused on is rebuilding that farm system. So getting that number one draft pick in your farm system is a way to get that ball rolling. And within a year or two, he would be at the big league level.
Yeah.
That's hard to do right now too, without these minor league kids playing.
That's
how
true.
How does that even work right now? I mean, you're basically sending him down to do nothing at this point.
You've got the taxi squads and stuff like that that are consisting of AAA players, and I'm sure some of these guys are going around and playing, you know, just not on the minor league teams. They're staying in shape, they're staying ready. He's in college right now, so he looking forward to a season with the Commodores there in Vanderbilt. But with COVID and all that stuff, it may not even happen. So
yeah,
that is what it is. You know, my next kind of point that I wanted to bring up, Zach, is we've talked extensively on our show about how Rob Manfred has dropped the ball. It's been something that I guess you could call it stubbornness or reluctance to cancel the MLB season, but that actually may work in the Red Sox favor.
Mm-hmm.
The reason for the Mookie Betts trade was to get below the luxury tax threshold. That doesn't officially reset until the trade deadline. The trade deadline is at the end of August. So if the Red Sox are still able to be playing at the end of August, that's when that will reset. And that's whenever all those penalties and all that stuff will go away. So as a Red Sox fan, that's something that we should all be cheering for, is that the season at least makes it that far. So with the Marlins giving the scare and the Cardinals giving that big scare, and now the Reds with their COVID outbreak on their team, it's like Red Sox fans just have their fingers crossed, just hoping that September comes.
Yeah, definitely. That is funny that Manfred is just not. It seems like he's not willing to quit. It seems like he's going to have to be forced, and I don't know. I don't know what it's going to take for him to call it quits. I don't know if he will. I mean, we've talked about it before. We think that if the Dodgers or the Yankees or a huge team like that had an outbreak, then he would call it quits. I don't know if he would at this point. I think him and the owners have decided that they're going to try to push to get to the playoffs, and that's when they get all that TV revenue. That's when everyone's watching baseball, and maybe they're just going to say, you know what, no matter what happens, we're just going to push through.
And wouldn't you know, the MLB is already talking about having a bubble for their playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine that.
Yeah, so stupid. They laid $1 short on that one.
Right, exactly.
I'd say it's a lot harder, though, to call it quits once you've already begun, because you've had to jump through so many hoops and do so much to even get it started. Once you're there, I mean, it would be a lot harder to call it quits. That's why I feel like in football, if the SEC gets going, they're going to play a few games before they get stopped.
Yeah, and I think they're going to have to be forced to stop, like as a serious outbreak or something is going to have to happen. I think if one player from one team tests positive, they might quarantine that team or whatever, but they're not just going to call it quits the second somebody tests positive.
I think that's the same with baseball. I mean, they're already going. They've already had cases. They've already dealt with it. I mean, it would take a true pandemic between a bunch of different teams at the same time for them to call it quits at this point.
Yep.
Yeah. No, I agree. And, that is to the benefit of the Red Sox right now, as they're just the only thing that they have to look forward to is that reset, so that they don't have to give up draft picks. They don't have to pay the league excess money just because they went over the threshold. And that brings me to my next point. JD Martinez, who is, $22 million a year and is a valuable piece to all 30 teams at this point, now that they've opened up the DH in the National League. One of these teams that are pushing to make the playoffs, they're, a second place team, third place team that could really make a run in September. That could be somebody that is targeted in the trade deadline. And that's something else that would benefit the Red Sox, because it would allow them to get rid of that massive contract, stay even further below that threshold, so that they could then turn around and sign a free agent next year and still yet be under that threshold. And by trading him now, you get to cash in and get some of the pieces that you're going to need for your farm system.
Yep.
He has an opt-out at the end of the season. I don't really see him opting out, especially the way that he's performed right now. So unless they want to be handcuffed to his $22 million next season, trading him now is the move that I make.
Yeah, absolutely. You got to trade him now. And if I were Chaim Bloom, I wouldn't care what you want to give me. Prospects, I'll take it. I don't really care, because he's not doing shit for you. He's basically only a DH. He doesn't really have any exceptional outfield skills. So if you're a DH and not hitting well, you're basically just worthless to the team. So I would be looking to offload him as quickly as possible.
And if I'm Chaim Bloom, I'm on the phone right now with the Cleveland Indians saying, hey, let's talk about Mike Clevenger and Zach Plesac that you guys just sent away from your team because your whole locker room or your whole roster is pissed off at them because they decided to go out for drinks in Chicago. You sent them down to your minor league taxi squad. Let's make a deal. We'll give you JD Martinez. You're already saying that you can win without them because you sent them away from your big league team. We'll trade you JD Martinez in exchange for Mike Clevenger, who, if we're looking at numbers, $4 million versus $22 million, that's a significant reduction in salary.
Yep.
Plus that fixes one of the major problems that the Red Sox have right now, and that's a solid, reliable arm. So you got him under contract till 2023. That's a good move in my opinion, and that's a move that I think Chaim Bloom may be interested in making.
Absolutely. Yeah, I would be trying to make that. I would be trying my damnedest to do that, because, like you said, the whole team is kind of pissed off at both of them, which I don't know. I have my own opinions about that. I think if it's that big of a deal, then why are you even playing in the first place? All those players that are so pissed off at them. I get it. It's a dumb thing to do, but I mean, any given player could bring COVID to the team on just in contact with somebody at Walmart or whatever. So it's not like they went out and like it intentionally. Well, I guess they did intentionally go out, but whatever. If I'm the Red Sox, I try to make that deal almost immediately because you've got two parties that basically don't want to deal with each other anymore. And I think Mike Clevenger has not really been happy with the whole situation there anyway. So,
I don't think he's been happy since the Indians traded Trevor Bauer.
mm-hmm. Yeah,
those two were pretty much besties, and that actually is the reason that I think that the Indians would be willing to just move on from Clevenger, because they were so quick to move on from Bauer, who was one of the best pitchers in the game, and they moved on from him. I could see them very easily being willing to part ways with Plesac and Clevenger. So that's who I'm calling if I'm Bloom. Speaking of Trevor Bauer, free agent at the end of the season, with that money that you're freeing up from trading JD Martinez, that's a good place where you could throw some of that cash.
Yeah. But do you think he's looking for a super huge deal though?
From what I've read, Bauer seemingly is wanting to do 1-year contracts because he wants to basically bet on himself every year and say, hey, I had this good of a season, pay me this much. He doesn't want to get like handcuffed into a $5 million a year deal, but then he starts putting up numbers to make 20 million a year or whatever it is. But that's also a risk in and of itself, because if you go out there and you have a shit season, then you're going to end up getting a lot less money. Right. But just in my mind, thinking about how amazing it would be if the Boston Red Sox were able to acquire Clevenger, they were able to finesse a deal with Trevor Bauer, and then all of a sudden next season, whenever Chris Sale returns, you've got Sale, you've got Erod, you've got Bauer, Clevenger, Nathan Eovaldi. Yeah. That is a rotation to be feared. That is a solid starting five every day of the week. You've got a chance for a W, and all you really had to give up to get that is JD Martinez.
Yep, that's pretty great. And I think a lot of Red Sox fans are probably still salty about the whole Mookie Betts trade because he's so fucking hot right now. But you got to think there was no way, I don't think they were going to be able to pay him anyway, because this whole thing that Chaim Bloom is doing is to try to get the farm system going again. I mean, you can't pay all these people all this money for this long in baseball and have any kind of farm system. So I don't think they were going to be able to make a deal with Mookie anyway.
I think the Red Sox kind of got blindsided when JD opted into his contract. I think they all thought that he was going to opt out after 2019 and that they would have that extra bulk of money freed up that could then be shifted over to Mookie Betts. When he opted in, I remember saying on the podcast that that's the final nail in the coffin of Mookie Betts in Boston, because there's no way that they're going to be able to get under this threshold and pay both of them.
Yeah, definitely.
So getting the right free agents is definitely going to be the next piece of their build that they have to do. Maybe it's Bauer. Maybe that is the guy that they bring in, but there are some others out there that are free agents that could also fill in and be reliable. We talked about it last week. Marcus Stroman just said deuces to the Mets. I'm going to be a free agent now. That would be a good guy that you could bring in on the cheap, because he didn't pitch this season. Obviously, he only pitched 11 games in 2019. So he hasn't really put up a lot of tape recently. Justin, we talked about, our boy Cam Smith and how he hasn't been able to put up a lot of tape for college scouts and stuff like that. That lowers his value. That lowers his chance of getting recruited, just like Marcus Stroman lowers his chances of getting a big contract. So he could come in on a 2-3 year deal for pennies on the dollar, basically, and then put up good numbers for you. Because Red Sox fans will remember this guy in Toronto lightened them up almost every time they played.
Good thing about baseball, when you got somebody like that, you're also getting a fresh arm. You're getting somebody that's fresh, and you don't have to worry about anything inside the elbow or something going wrong early when you get him. So you're saving money and you're getting somebody that's basically rested for 2 years.
Yeah, Stroman will be resting from now till March or whenever spring training kicks off next year. So he hopefully shouldn't have any issues.
Yeah, I could definitely see him coming back to the American League East. And I've never been a fan of Marcus Stroman because of the fact that he always beat up on the Red Sox every time we played them. But I'll change my tune if he puts the B on his hat.
Yep, for sure.
And the last thing that I really want to touch on for the Red Sox in their rebuild is they have to find the right manager. I talked about it whenever they announced that Ron Ronicky was going to be the interim manager of the team, that would be a good move for this season so that it gives Chaim Bloom a chance to go out and find his guy to come in and fill the position. Because whenever Chaim Bloom became the general manager, Alex Cora was still the manager of the team. Everything was hunky-dory. They were a year removed from the World Series, ready to attack 2020. But then all hell broke loose with all the scandals and all that in the offseason. And then about a month before the season started, they were still looking for a new manager to fill his shoes. Ron Ronicky was the bench coach for Alex Cora whenever the Red Sox won the 2018 World Series. He was always just going to be a Band-Aid. He was never intended to be a long-term solution. I know he's getting a lot of guff this year because the team has been so terrible and he's not handled the Boston media very well and things like that. So he's not going to be around at the end of the season. He wanted to retire anyway, but he was like, I'll do it. I guess, I got nothing else to do. To me, the guy that Chaim Bloom needs to go after is pitching coach from the Tampa Bay Rays, dude by the name of Kyle Snyder. Kyle Snyder is a former major league pitcher. He pitched famously for the Royals, but he spent a brief time in Boston with the Red Sox. So he's familiar with being a big league pitcher. He's been rumored to be one of those guys that has a really good connection with the players. That's what everybody on the Red Sox said that they liked so much about Cora, was that he had a good connection with those players. This guy he's been with the Rays organization since 2012. He began working in the minor leagues down in the single A level, worked his way all the way up to the big league club in 2017. He was promoted to be the Rays pitching coach. As you know, the Rays have had a very good pitching program all the way through. I think that's a big credit to Kyle Snyder and his ability to kind of be a pitcher whisperer, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
They had Blake Snell win a Cy Young. They've turned Tyler Glass now into a monster. Charlie Morton's a beast. So this guy is the guy that I've got on my radar that I want as the next manager of the Boston Red Sox. Oh, and by the way, guess who the GM was down in Tampa when he got promoted to the big league club? Chaim Bloom.
Yeah, that's fitting.
So I could see that coming all the way up to Boston. That's the guy I want. If you had to make that call, Zach, where would you kind of go? Would you think about going a pitching coach for your manager, a fielder for your manager, or would you want to try to get one of these old crafty veteran managers that are out there that they've managed for decades and they've got all the experience and all that stuff, or a new guy like Snyder?
Yeah, the only thing I have reservations about with the pitching coach coming up to be the full-time manager is that I don't know what he knows about the hitting side and pinch hitters and stuff like that, but anybody can learn. So someone that's in such like a niche part of the game is a little concerning, but it's not too terrible. I think if you're smart enough, you can understand the other side of the game, or you can listen to your bench coach and you can just work as a team, as a coaching team, instead of just you are the decision maker and whatever you say goes. He can kind of rely on the guys that he'll have to help him out with that. But all in all, I think pitching is obviously the Red Sox big problem. And I think if Chris Sale and Erod were healthy, it wouldn't be as much of a problem. I don't know, but like you said, the farm system is the big problem. If you're not going out there and getting all-stars, you have no one to fall back on. So I think getting a good farm system started is definitely priority number one.
And Dave Dombrowski gutted the farm system to acquire all the superstars that were on the big league roster. So that's in part why there was that gap right there. But let's move on. I don't want to put everybody to sleep talking about baseball the rest of the night. So let's talk about a little bit of the UFC that happened this past weekend. We had some of the big boys going at it, and they were in there banging and taking each other down and poking each other's eyes out. So it was a wild night. Zach, what did you think of UFC 252?
It wasn't bad. Basically the co-main and the main event had some injury type stuff kind of screw with the fight. The co-main being Sean O'Malley and I can't remember the other dude's name. Cheeto Vera.
Marlon Vera,
yeah. So O'Malley did something to his ankle, I believe, and couldn't really put weight on it for the rest of the fight, and then ended up getting taken down and couldn't defend himself and got lost by TKO, which sucks to see from such a young, talented, electric guy. I wish that didn't happen, obviously, but that's just something that happens in UFC.
From what Marlon Vera was saying in the post-fight interview and what I've seen in the aftermath is that Marlon Vera might have been the one that actually caused that injury with a kick. If you go back and watch around 2 minutes in the first round, Marlon Vera lands a kick to that leg right above the knee. Football players know this injury as a stinger. Something that kind of hits the nerves. You kind of get a dead leg. Yeah. And then immediately after that is when Sugar tried to kind of step on it, and it stepped awkwardly. And then he was like, oh, okay, I can't really walk on that leg. I've got some nerve issues going on. And if you saw, like, he kind of started to get a little bit more feeling and a little bit more mobility back before he was then taken down and then pummeled. I do think the stoppage was a little bit quick. I think that he was still able to defend himself, but just the fact that he had been limping around for 30 seconds and not really doing much on that, I think that's what led to the official stepping in and saying, okay, that's enough. I don't want to see this guy get completely beat up.
Right.
That's the thing with O'Malley, though. He's so explosive on the ground and on his feet. He could have got out of that. He could have still won that fight. And I think we should yet to see. He's still so fresh. We've got a lot more to see of Sean O'Malley, because he's just like so exciting to watch. He's like the nice Conor McGregor. He's got all the antics, but he's not punching old men and doing all the non-necessary things outside of the UFC
yet.
Yeah,
I wouldn't say that he's nice. I think he's kind of an asshole, and I think he's got that in him to be at that Conor level. He just doesn't have his own whiskey. He doesn't have his own stuff that he would be promoting in a bar. And then when somebody talks shit to him, then he throws hands.
Well, until he punches an old man, I'm cool with him.
He could definitely go either way. I mean, like you said, he hasn't made much money yet, so it's hard to say. But you are definitely right. He's very exciting to watch, and he's only 25, so I think he'll probably take some time off to let this heal, and he'll be back, and it'll be all right. But I just hate to see that when someone's just getting their feet wet and making a name for themselves, and then something like this happens. That sucks.
Oh, and this is the second time he's had an injury to that leg. He had the same surgery that Cam Newton had, the Lisfranc or whatever surgery on his foot. And that's what kept Cam Newton out of all of last season, was that injury to his foot. And if it's a re-aggravation of that, it makes you wonder, like, is he ever going to be fully healed from that? But if it was just a stinger and it was a dead leg and he's, fine today, I haven't heard any other reports about it.
Ariel Helwani said that he had an X-ray done and there's no fractures, but he'll need to get an MRI, and they're going to do the MRI on the ankle and on the knee, and that'll be definitive. And it might be something that needs surgery. Who knows?
It's good that there are no fractures, at least, because that step that he took looked like it was a really weird like twist of his ankle and stuff like that.
His ankle really turned, and he kind of almost turned onto the top of his foot. It was not a good position for that ligament to be in.
No, not at all. What did you think about the trilogy fight, Justin? The Stipe and DC.
Dude, I'm just over DC, period. Like, I'm sorry. I don't know. I mean, I'm just over DC, man. Like, he never beat John Jones, so he's never going to really be a champion. He's getting old. I'm just tired of watching him fight. I didn't even get to see most of that fight because I was writing a paper. I stopped to watch the Sean O'Malley fight because I was actually interested in that one. But when I saw DC coming up, I was watching it, but at the same time, I was writing a paper, so I was kind of, like I said, I hate DC that much. I don't know why.
Yeah, I mean, he's 40 years old now. He does not bring anything exciting to the table. I think he's one hell of a wrestler. Obviously, he's got all those accolades, but this fight was just not even including the eye poking. I think this fight was just, I mean, and I think that the eye poke really did mess with him. I mean, he couldn't even see out of that eyeball for the rest of the fight, and he told Joe Rogan that he's during a post-fight interview, he still couldn't see out of it. So that definitely had to play a part in it, but it's just, it was just, I don't know. It was sloppy. He didn't do any, grappling. He never tried to take Stipe. Well, I mean, I think he did try to take Stipe down, but I mean, if people are going to say that DC is this huge, amazing wrestler, why the hell ain't he wrestling? I mean, he got knocked out by Stipe. Why would you even entertain standing with the guy?
Well, during the fight, DC always had that little move that he liked to try to shoot in, and then he would come back with an overhand right. Stipe was catching that move and just pushing him up against the fence the entire time. It's hard to secure a takedown whenever your back is up against the cage.
Sure.
90% of the fight. But yeah, Zach and I were texting during the fights and all that stuff. And going into that third round, whenever the eye poke happened, we had it a 1-1 fight. We had DC winning the first round and Stipe winning the second. And then the third round was a bit of a toss-up.
Mm-hmm.
I think ultimately Stipe would have gotten it because he finished with some flurries at the end, maybe in part because DC couldn't see him coming. But then from there, the rest of the fight was all downhill for DC. But the ref didn't see that eye poke. And I think that was a big, significant non-call, basically.
Yeah.
DC complained about it immediately. And then to start the fourth round, he even like verbally said, "I can't see." I think if the ref had seen that eye poke and DC was still saying, "I can't see," then the ref is going to have the doctor come in and the doctor's going to stop that fight.
Yep.
Would you want your career to be ended on a doctor stoppage?
No way.
I don't know. Like I said, I used to, even in his prime, I didn't care for DC, but I at least was looking forward to those fights. And like I said, this last fight, I had it on, but I was more interested in writing a paper on the Cold War than I was watching DC fight. I mean, I ain't got nothing.
Yeah, I totally agree.
I hate that guy. I don't know why, but I just don't like the guy.
I think he should have changed camps, because the only reason he went down to light heavyweight is because he was teammates with Cain Velasquez and he didn't want to go up against him. So I don't think he was ever really fit for light heavyweight because he just didn't give a shit about losing weight. He just cut weight probably 2-3 days before and never actually wanted to get down in weight. I think he fights at heavyweight because that's where he basically naturally sits. And if that's the case, he should have just stayed at heavyweight his entire career. I think he would have had a lot better career. I don't know. I don't know what to say about DC. I definitely think that it's a lot better to go down with just a unanimous decision loss than a doctor stoppage, because then there's no real question. I don't know. It sucks that he has to go out this way. But at the same time, think about it from Stipe's perspective. I mean, there's all this questions about this trilogy. That guy is awesome. I mean, he's a firefighter. He is the heavyweight champ. He's defended that belt more than anyone in the UFC, and he definitively, pretty much, other than this eye poke stuff, beat DC in a trilogy. And a lot of people say that DC is the greatest heavyweight of all time. So if you can beat that guy twice, what does that say about Stipe? And there's nothing but controversy surrounding it.
I know somebody, I don't remember who it was, but they said something, DC ain't shit. This was like 2 or 3 years ago.
Yeah.
I think I heard that too from somewhere.
Yeah, and ever since then, I just kind of had a stigma against him.
That was basically just that rooted from the John Jones versus DC controversy. And I think John Jones is a much better fighter. I will say that at heavyweight, I think DC is a great fighter, and he has his own accolades that he can fall back on. But at the same time, Stipe beat him. And I think that's definitive. I just hate that it's just surrounding this whole eye poke thing. Like, well, if he would have never got poked in the eye, who knows what would have happened? I think Stipe still beats him. I think Stipe looked very good in that fight. And DC even said in the post interview that Stipe was getting underhooks, and last fight, DC was getting his, and he was able to take him down, but Stipe was able to stuff all of that, and his grappling was basically muted. So that tells me that Stipe upped his game, and he wasn't just looking to knock out DC. He was ready to do the whole gauntlet.
Yep. He was ready to engage in that clinch warfare up against the cage. You guys both have mentioned John Jones. Of course, immediately after the fight, he hops on Twitter and starts talking about, oh, I'm going to drop the light heavyweight belt, which I know he has officially contacted UFC now and said, hey, I'm no longer your light heavyweight champ. Are we actually going to see him move up and challenge for the heavyweight title now?
Yep, 100%. He wants Stipe.
I could see him doing it, man. I think John Jones has still got it as long as he stays with all the bull mess.
Yep.
Now, would you, if you're UFC, do you give him Stipe right away, or do you make him prove it a few fights?
No, I think Francis has earned his rematch with Stipe, and I think you can definitely give John a high level heavyweight. I don't necessarily know who would be a good matchup for him, but I definitely think you should kind of throw him to the wolves right off the bat. I mean, he's your light heavyweight GOAT. So why does he get a pass for moving up? I think if you want to move up, then you're going to play with the big boys.
So if you have Stipe and Francis Ngannou going at it for the title, why not on the co-main of that same exact card have John Jones versus Biggie Boy?
I would love that.
For those,
then have the winners face off at the end.
Exactly. No, well, I mean, obviously not the same night. That we're not barbarians like you.
No, I don't mean fight. I mean just in the ring face off.
Oh, yeah, that could be cool.
To promote the big event. Yeah,
that'd be wild.
Yeah. So speaking of Biggie Boy, Jairzinho Rosenstrike was able to get the TKO over Junior Dos Santos. And you mentioned earlier about DC not wanting to fight in heavyweight for the majority of his career because of Cain Velasquez's teammate. These two were teammates.
Yeah, that was very weird to hear. I didn't know that. And I think John Anik was talking about it, and he said that JDS offered to spar Rosenstrike.
Yeah, that would be wild.
Yeah. I mean, I get it. Friends and people that train together, they can put all that kind of stuff aside in the ring, and it's go time, and then after that we're friends again or whatever. But that's still kind of crazy.
The real winner of that fight was JDS's mustache.
Whew. Next level.
I've seen that in boxing. I've seen best friends that spar together every day, and then they get to a point where they have to face off, and for like a day or two, they don't talk, and they got to kind of get some kind of hatred inside of them. And then as soon as it's over, they're hugging. And then that night they go out to eat and everything's straight. They spar again the next week as soon as they get better.
Yeah.
That's just that's what happens when it comes to combat sports. You can only dodge each other so far. But if you're two of the best in the world, you're two of the best in the world. You're eventually going to have to set that aside and, throw hands. I mean, that's just all there is to it.
And to that point, Justin, going into the fight, they were ranked number 5th and 6th, respectively, in the heavyweight ranks. So
yeah, no more running. There's no more dodging at that point.
Yeah. I mean, I'm definitely glad that Rosenstrike got the win. I think he's right up there with everybody else. There's Francis and there's everybody else, but I think Rosenstrike definitely is a top contender. He probably needs a little bit of work on some things. I mean, in the heavyweight division, you can kind of get away with not knowing a whole lot of the other side of the martial arts. If you're a powerful hitter, you can just get away with that one punch ability. But I definitely think he would do well to learn a lot more of the sport. And I think a fight with John Jones would be great. I don't know if I necessarily like his chances just because John Jones is so skilled at everything. But I mean, I'm absolutely going to tune in if that's what they decide to do.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really see too many other real options for John Jones at heavyweight. If we're going to, immediately just start throwing him in the top 5, you're going to throw him in against Black Beast, Biggie Boy, Francis. I mean, and then Stipe. That's pretty much your gauntlet that you've got there. And he's only going to have to fight 1 or 2 of them before he's fighting Stipe or whoever the champ is at that time.
Yeah. The one thing that is interesting to me about John's timing with this is that he never gave anyone at light heavyweight a rematch other than Gustafsson and I guess DC. And he never fought DC at heavyweight. And that was always the big question. Could DC beat John at heavyweight? He kind of dodged a lot of that. It seems like he most notably didn't want to give Dominic Reyes a rematch at light heavyweight, which was the closest John has ever been to losing. And he never answered the question of, is DC better than John at heavyweight? So I don't know. It doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things, but it's just kind of a suspect thing to do.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that. I think it is kind of weird, the timing of it all. As soon as DC announces he's hanging up, he's like, oh, I'm ready to go heavyweight now. So that was kind of strange. And, I don't know, like, are you even excited about light heavyweight anymore?
No, it's going to fall into obscurity. I think Dominic Reyes will be the champ. Some new kid will have to come in or somebody will have to move up from middleweight or something for it to be exciting. I don't see anyone in that division that's exciting. I think Dominic Reyes is a good fighter. I mean, he put the screws to John Jones, and that's pretty impressive, but there's no one for him to beat that's formidable. So it won't be very exciting.
No, and they tried to put the hype train on Johnny Walker, but that's been slammed shut.
Yeah, I don't know what that kid's problem is. He's got all the size and all that stuff, and he's Brazilian, but I don't know. Maybe he's just too wild.
I think that's what it is. He's just too wild and crazy and a fun-loving kid. I mean, he tore his labrum doing the worm after a fight. Come on now.
Yeah, whatever. But I mean,
wild and crazy kids.
Yeah.
Real quick, y'all remember that?
Yeah, I remember that.
Sorry, that's all I heard from Brandon. I heard wild, crazy kids. I was like, wait a minute.
But to that point, John is notoriously a wild party boy, and he is the youngest champion in UFC history. So,
well, and because of that, I think that's why the light heavyweight division kind of got stale. Is he would come back and he would clear out the division, show that he's the best, and then he would go pop at USADA and be out for 2 years. Come back and beat everybody again, and then he would go drink and drive and shoot guns and be suspended for a while. Yeah. He'd come back and win a couple more fights. And, we talked about it, that he got to the point where he was just fighting not to lose. He wasn't fighting to win anymore. And when he gets up there with them big boys, he better fight to win, because I think you said it best, Zach. They swing refrigerators at you.
Oh yeah, Absolutely. If he ever goes up against Francis, that is going to be a hell of a fight because Francis is gigantic, and there's no way he's ever going to make 205 or 205. And John is, I'm sure he walks around around 230.
230.
Yeah, something like that. But that does not equate to the same thing that Francis is walking around with.
The one thing John will have over pretty much all the heavyweights is speed.
Yes.
Athleticism. Yeah.
Yep. But will they be able to eat his punches? Will they be able to eat his kicks? Will they be able to just absolutely dominate him with their size? We'll see. I think he's a little old to be doing this. I think it would have been good to move up to heavyweight maybe 2 years ago and just kind of skip all those fights like we've been talking about where he was just fighting not to lose in light heavyweight. But whatever.
The NBA playoffs started today, guys. Any excitement about that?
I think it's a 3-team race. I mean, you got the Lakers, the Clippers, and who's the other team? I can't think right now. I think it's going to come up between the Lakers and the Clippers. You know, that's going to be your winner.
So basically, whoever comes out of the West is who you're calling.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the Portland Trailblazers, they're doing
well.
They're an 8 seed, dude.
Yeah, but they're balling right now, though.
Portland has the Lakers
first round. Yeah.
So good luck with that.
The winner of that game wins it all.
And I've got that bet with Janice that he took the Lakers, and I've got the field. So, I mean, he's got one of the top dogs out there, but
you better be pulling for the Clippers, buddy.
I've got 15 other teams that could knock it off.
Yeah,
I'm telling you, dude. Damian Lillard right now is playing like a man possessed.
Sure. Yeah, he's doing great, but it'll be very tough to beat playoff LeBron and AD and Kyle Kuzma and all those dudes. That's going to be tough because
when you say it out loud, it just sounds illegal.
I think the team is on Damian Lillard's shoulders, and there's everybody else just kind of cheering him on. So that's going to be tough. But I mean, if they can beat the Lakers, then they're going all the way.
You know what's funny is the Phoenix Suns went like 9-0. Booker got the MVP of the bubble or whatever. He was averaging like 40 points a game, 14 rebounds, and they went undefeated and still didn't make the playoffs. Like, I don't understand how that's even possible.
Yeah, that doesn't make any sense.
Like, why even waste their time to go in the bubble in the first place if they can go undefeated and not make it?
Well, they had to win out, and I think it was the Trailblazers would have had to have lost their final game. If the Trailblazers would have lost in their last game, then the Suns would be that 8th seed. They had like a 1% chance of making the final cut when the whole thing started, and that percentage was based on if they went undefeated in the play-in games. It just didn't work out for them.
Yeah,
they did their part though.
They did their part. It was just the Blazers had a better record before COVID and all that stuff, so they had a little bit easier time in the bubble to get to that point. But if you're a Phoenix Suns fan, then you should be excited for the future because you got a good team.
And they're so young, dude. I mean, Booker's in his 3rd year. Devin Booker, 3rd or 4th year. They're going to be nasty in the years to come.
Yep, definitely. I agree. You guys got anything else you want to bring up tonight?
I do want to talk about Cade Mays. Did you read about that?
I don't know what that is.
Cade Mays, he was one of the top linemen about 3 years ago coming out of high school from Knoxville. And he was supposed to go to Tennessee, but he decided to go with Georgia. Well, he transferred over this year for his senior year to play with his brother, who's just as good, who's coming in as a freshman.
Tennessee?
At Tennessee. Well, they've been back and forth with the NCAA, blah, blah. Well, today they came back and said he's ineligible for his senior year. So Tennessee's trying to appeal it right now. But that's heartbreaking. Like, that's a bigger hurt than the schedule that came out. Because Cade Mays is like a first-team All-American. He has been the last few years. So he was going to anchor our line this year. So unless that appeal comes through, saying he can play, that's going to be a hurt to Tennessee Vols this year.
And why isn't he able to? Did he not do the transfer protocol and wait a year out and all that stuff?
He didn't, but he had a reason why. It was not. I'm not gonna. I'll look it up and I'll tell y'all next episode. But something happened at Georgia that caused him to transfer, and that kind of, I guess, it made it void as far as having to sit out a year. In other words, something major happened that he didn't feel comfortable at Georgia. Blah blah blah, whatever. I'm sure it didn't. I'm sure they made it seem that way, but something happened, so he didn't have to sit out a year. So he played last year at Georgia.
Okay.
He started, played every game, but they originally said that he was he was good to go. He's been practicing. He's been playing that position. And then today, right before they made the schedule announcement, they said he was ineligible.
Wow.
Well, I mean, Justin, you can go ahead and let the people know what we're going to talk about on Thursday night, and I'm sure that's a conversation that will be brought up once again. So go ahead and plug that episode for us.
Yeah, Thursday. Hopefully everything will work out. Like I said, I just set it up right before we got on here, so things happen. But I got John Dunn from the All Vol Collins show coming on to talk with us about some Tennessee football and some SEC football. He's had guests such as Paul Fennebaum. I can't never say it right.
Paul Feinbaum?
Yeah, Feinbaum. He's had him on the show. He's had Hainsworth, all the Vols legends on the show.
Nice.
The guy knows his football, especially the SEC and Tennessee Vols. So it should be a really good informational episode.
Nice.
We know a little bit on here, but I'm sure he could school all of us based on his knowledge.
Oh, yeah. Speaking of your Vols prospects or whatever, did you guys see the latest commit to Vols basketball?
Number one point guard in the nation.
Yeah,
man.
Kennedy Chandler is number one overall prospect and number one point guard has committed to Vols basketball, and that's pretty huge because what was that, a couple of years ago or whatever, that you guys had a real formidable basketball team.
Yeah, since Barry came over, which I think he's gone now. Unfortunately, we couldn't pay him enough, but when he came over, he brought over a winning mentality. Man, we've been, this next year we're supposed to be in the top 10 preseason, which is unheard of. And then 2 years ago we were ranked number 1, which is I don't think ever happened in boys Vols basketball.
Mm-hmm.
It was a common occurrence in women's basketball, but yeah, man,
it's exciting.
Tennessee's no longer just a football school. It's kind of cool.
Yeah. I love seeing schools that can do both. A lot of places either do one or the other. But it's really exciting to see a school that can really excel in both.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's cool that that's what's been the catalyst to make Zach a Vol fan.
Well, I mean, I hear about it every damn week. So,
well, I mean, but you got into it whenever Grant Williams and Admiral Schofield and all those guys were down there in Tennessee. You were cheering for the Vols just as hard as we were. So I think by default you've become a Vols fan.
Yeah, I mean that was very exciting to see. So this number one prospect guy, hopefully that can do something for the program.
He's a beast, dude. He plays against Bronny and all those guys all the time.
Yeah, I can see the Tennessee being one of those teams that has a tough time because of the SEC and the Bamas and everyone else of the world, but I think they can get an edge on the basketball side and maybe go for a championship. Who knows?
We got Pons coming back, who's Defensive Player of the Year last year, and we also got our point guard that played last year, which will be moved down to shooting guard whenever he comes in, who was first team All-American last year. So Tennessee's gonna be tough next year, bro. You just wait and see. They're coming.
And that football team, baby, it's coming back too.
Yeah, everything's because Tennessee's about to return to dominance, man.
Yes, sir. And I'm here for it. Guys, tune in Thursday night to hear us talking with John from the All Vol Call-In show. And that should be a good conversation, a lot of fun for that one. And we'll be back here Monday night for this show once again. Thanks for watching. Peace.
I'll say this. Down he goes. One shot, JD.
Thanks for listening. New episodes are recorded every